Welcome to Academy Live. I'm here today to talk about a topic that's very close to my heart, dispatch. And we have a very special guest on, Mr. Chris Wicks, manager of Academy Coaching here at Pax8 Academy. He's here to discuss the session we had at Beyond called Wrangling Your Service Department, how dispatching can save you thousands. So, with that titillating title, I would like to welcome on Chris Wicks. Chris, welcome to the show.
Howdy, ma'am.
I love the tip of the hat. It was one of the fun parts about our session is sidling up onto stage, big stance, doing the hat tip. That was a great time. So, besides fancy headwear, tell us a little bit about yourself. I was fortunate enough to have you as a partner in crime, so I know all about your history. But tell our audience a little bit about why you chose to talk about this topic at Beyond.
Thanks, Amanda. It's something I'm passionate about. It might be because I oversaw dispatch, but big picture, when you take a step back in the managed service world, it's just such a central part of what we do. And we're all about servicing our clients. And so everything that comes in needs to be taken care of, and that dispatcher sits right in the middle. My journey in the MSP world, I started off and I've pretty much held every role you can have at an MSP. And so I understood the importance of what happens when a ticket starts. In fact, I'd have to say probably the people I spoke with the most at my MSP were the dispatchers. I was part of multiple MSPs as a technician, and the dispatcher was always somebody that I was on the phone with all day, every day, making sure I was doing the right thing at the right time with the right client at the right location, all the details that you need to manage. A dispatcher helps with it. And not only that, they tend to be pretty personable, friendly people. So they always were people that were fun to talk to after coming off of a bad client situation or running around hectic. It was a light spot in my day to talk with the dispatcher.
Yeah. Having been a dispatcher, I'm going to try to live up to that expectation of being a fun person to talk to today. But that was actually my history too. I spent a significant portion of my MSP career as a dispatcher. I'd also love to ask you about. I help run the dispatcher peer groups, and you help run the service manager peer groups. So tell us a little bit about that unique kind of relationship as well. You also, in addition to being a coach, also do that. You do ILTs. Tell us a little bit about what else you
Yeah. So, like you said, I do a service manager peer group. That in particular is directly connected to the dispatch world. It's very common for service managers to be discussing dispatch because they tend to be the service manager's connection to the team. So that comes up a lot. But in regard to the instructor led training, I do a service management course and an advanced service management one. So you might be getting a little bit of a hint of an area of passion of mine because I was the service manager that beat my head against the wall a few too many times. If I can save somebody else the pain I went through, and help them do it a little bit better. That's what I'm here to do. That's why I love what I do. I get to save people a little bit of the struggle, give them a few tips and tricks. And definitely one of those things is how service managers are able to keep everything running at the MSP.
Yeah. Well, from the dispatcher side, having a service manager like you always makes it way easier. Somebody who understands what we do. So, note to all those dispatchers out there who would love their service manager to understand a little bit more about what you do. Chris is a great person to send your service manager to. But on the flip side, let's talk a little bit about why people should even consider dispatch. Say there are people in our audience that don't have a dispatcher. We have a clip here from our presentation about why we even have dispatch. Let's go ahead and roll that.
Yeah, today we're going to show you why it's such a critical role, right? Even if you have a dispatcher, maybe give you some food for thought on how you can improve that role, or whether there's some kind of process or something you can do to really increase their impact on your business. So first off, I love this picture. Whose day feels like this most days, right? Black Friday, literally every day. That's how I used to feel. Panic, confrontation, all kinds of chaos, never being on top of it, right? That pressure building up, engineers not knowing what to work on. How many of you would like maybe something like the second picture, right? More organized way to do service, a better prioritized plan for how you approach all the tickets flowing into your system, having somebody to be that buffer between your engineers and the clients, get them to actually focus on their work, right? At Beyond, we've been talking about a lot of great products. AI is awesome, and it's totally gonna fix everything except for dispatch. So we've been talking about all these things, right? But in an MSP, can anybody tell me what your most valuable inventory is? Anybody brave?
Time,
I love
wow.
these people, okay.
Great work.
I swear I didn't pay them. No, your most valuable inventory is time, right? So when you have a dispatcher, making the most of them, or if you're thinking about getting a dispatcher, thinking about how much time you're going to save due to cherry picking, due to just communications, right? That constant flow of communication that has to go back to the clients. Those are gonna be things that are gonna make a huge impact on your business.
All right. It's always interesting to hear yourself. A little bit of an uncomfortable experience, but I am really interested in what you have to say about this topic. Having worked on this with you, I know you have a really a ton of interesting thoughts around this sort of why we need a dispatcher. So first off, I would love for you to help our audience understand what kinds of signals are there? What kinds of tests on your service delivery, your operations, your processes? What are the warning signs that you might be due for a dispatcher if you don't have one already?
That's a great question. And I think it varies a little bit by MSP. You usually are picking up a dispatcher around 5 techs, somewhere in that neighborhood. And prior to that, you have been doing a self-dispatch model where everybody is responsible for everything potentially. So we see people pulling this, everybody gets the phone calls and whoever gets to the phone first, or maybe there's one service board and everybody's picking tickets off of the board. Some of the things that you notice when there tend to be issues where that tension's starting to form, the inefficiency is starting to creep up. You might have cherry picking by some of the technicians and people picking certain tickets. You'll notice certain tickets that are maybe those more difficult clients tend to hang out a little longer. You might notice some priority issues where a priority 1 ticket that's an emergency doesn't get the attention that it needs right away. Again, maybe a hot potato, or maybe people have their head down already working on other tickets. We have to keep in mind that when a technician's doing their job, they're picking a ticket, they're working with that client, and they're focused. If you find your techs at the end of 8 hours telling you that they're burnt out, that's another good indication because they've been trying to juggle so much throughout the day that they're just worn out from the phones, the rescheduling tickets, dealing with P1s, who's on that one. You might have some people tripping over each other a little bit to grab some of those tickets too without a dispatcher. And all of that tends to err toward this inefficiency, which I know we'll talk more about later.
Yeah. It's like I always like to say, I don't know who told me this, but for the first time, but I've heard it from almost every coach I know in Pax8 Academy that there's no such thing as multitasking. There is track switching, which is an exhaustive process where you have to stop what you're doing and start something else, and a lot of energy, a lot of focus is lost in that transition. So I do think that's probably one of the core things that you mentioned in our presentation: cognitive overload of decision fatigue and all of that. So all really good reasons why you should look at somebody who can be that overarching eye in the sky, that overseer, that big picture person, right? So tell me, all right, our audience has decided to get a dispatcher. What's the worst kind of mistake that they tend to make when they pick their first dispatcher?
That's another really good question, Amanda. I'm thinking back to when I entered into the MSP world. We were not in that state. We were everybody does everything, and we decided to switch to dispatch. I think one common mistake is thinking the dispatcher is going to solve all problems without some guidance. You just hire the dispatcher and say, hey, jump in here and you're going to fix it all. Great. Off to the races. And then your high D owner in the disc profile, driver personality is back off to winning business or whatever they're doing, but the dispatcher really needs that guidance and clarity of what that role is meant to be and defined. And you will find having somebody dedicated to a role that's all about coordination and scheduling is going to improve things. But without intentional process, you're going to be missing out on some of those efficiency gains, at least initially.
Yeah. I think back to, talking about that close relationship between the service manager and the dispatcher. Part of that is that guidance and that communication back and forth, understanding the important things, the priorities of the business, and then having the dispatcher really be able to carry out and follow that process that's laid out before them. So we talked a little bit about efficiencies. I know you brought a second clip here. Let's talk about some math. And this is some pretty powerful stuff. So let's roll this clip about the power of 15 minutes.
Now I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the financial component. We like to call this the power of 15 minutes. So I'm going to have this scenario for you. Imagine in this scenario that you're charging $200 an hour to bill your clients. Hopefully that's not too big of an imagination for you. And then we look at 15 minutes of lost time per technician when we're looking at self-dispatch. Let me walk you through that. Imagine your technician coming in Monday morning. I'm sure you all have experienced this. They have the backpack pile of tickets that they carried over from the previous week that they still need to solve. And then they come in Monday morning, and what's waiting for them? Probably some P1s, some password resets, a little bit of chaos in the morning, Monday morning. And you have to think about this engineer's perspective. If they're self-dispatching, they're responsible for making sure all those tickets are taken care of, all those clients. They go through and they look through the massive tickets. They probably know to do the P1 first, but like Amanda mentioned the word cherry picking, sometimes we like to go to the things we enjoy more or the people we enjoy more, and so they have all these things they need to work through in their head. Imagine them having to schedule their tickets, reschedule their tickets. What do they have to do when they reschedule? They got to call their clients. Do the techs like picking up the phone to call clients to reschedule? Probably not. And then they have decisions to make. They've got this pile of tickets. How many people here, raise your hand if you believe in decision fatigue? It's a thing. So your engineer is sitting there with this mass of tickets having to decide what to do, and they're mentally exhausted. So 15 minutes, in my opinion, is a conservative estimate, and we'll talk more about that later. Now you take that $200 an hour, you multiply it times that 15 minutes a day, just 15 minutes, and we come out to $50 a day. $50 doesn't sound like much, but remember, that's each day. Now we multiply that times 5 days in a week, and notice I put 49 weeks, not 52. It's because we recommend you let your engineers take a vacation from time to time. Let them get up from the desk. They need to have some mental clarity, some sanity. And if we do that, we end up at $12,250 of lost billing opportunity per technician. Think about that. I don't know how many techs you have, but just let that sit. That's a real number now. It's not just $50.
Yeah, those numbers shock me every time, no matter how many times I hear them. And actually, while we were giving our presentation, I was waving my hat so enthusiastically, I threw my hat band off into the audience because that's the level of surprise I get every time I hear that math. But so we talk about this over $12,000, right, in lost opportunity. You hinted at this earlier, but where does this time go, and how does a dispatcher help recapture sort of that efficiency?
Great question. When the technician has to manage all of their own tickets, the way to think about it is in his self-dispatch model, the technician grabs the ticket. From that point forward, they own it 100% until it's completed. What can happen in that journey is, I mentioned in there, their backpack full of tickets when they come in for the day, but it's not too far of a cry. I remember a lot of my technicians that I had on the team were carrying 30, 40, 50 tickets, and they had to figure out how to juggle all of those, prioritize them, decide what to work on, and keep in mind when they come in the morning, there's already some fresh ones that need attention, maybe some emergencies. And so we get into decision fatigue that I mentioned, having to parse through all those, we get into the fact that I have to reschedule with clients. I also mentioned techs don't love picking up the phone. So every time they have to reschedule a ticket or move it along, there's just a big overhead of managing all that. And here's the reality is that dispatchers, the people with the right personality, tend to enjoy that sort of stuff. Most technicians don't. They don't love the administrative overhead that's involved with working the tickets. And so they're not very efficient at it. They tend to avoid it. And again, that decision fatigue wears people out. It slows them down. I mean, most of the time when I was helping techs, they're looking at a fork in the road trying to decide which one to go down, and they just get stalled out.
Yeah. And I'm curious, you kind of underpin a lot of what you talk about with this sort of life balance, or this kind of keeping people in your company happy as well as efficient and
Mm-hmm.
working, right? So what is the psychological cost of this, if this decision fatigue? Um, can it affect our employees, our retention? Should that be something we're worried about?
Yeah. Has anybody that's listening done the math on what it costs you to replace a technician? All the investment and time that you took to hire the person, train the person. Remember, they're not billable day one, unfortunately. We would love that, but that doesn't happen. So you invest all this time, and then you have a technician who's maybe been there for a year or two. How much client knowledge, tech knowledge, all the things that they've gained, to have that person leave is a big hit, financially, emotionally, to the team. The team misses, it feels that real quick, especially in a smaller MSP, but really at any point, all the technicians are needed. So there's a cost to that, but I think the psychology of it, like I mentioned, I don't know if told you this story, but I had a technician who worked for me who was a go-getter, like great technician, always trying to learn more, do certifications, wanted to do his best job. And he would come to me after an 8-hour day, just exhausted and burnt out. And I was like, what is going on here? Why, why are you so exhausted? And a big part of it is he was trying to do too much himself. He wasn't leaning on the dispatcher to do a lot of it. And couple that with not being great at taking a lunch or taking breaks or getting up from the desk. There's tons of studies out there on the whole idea of sprint recover, but the fact that you really have diminishing returns on your effectiveness over time if you're focused for more than an hour or 90 minutes. If you don't take a break, your effective application of whatever work you're doing goes down. So those techs that sit at their desk, work all the way through lunch to the end of the day, their ability to be effective has diminished substantially. The importance of stepping away from your desk, shaking it off for a minute, walking around the office or around the block, coming back, it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's powerful advice for all of us, I would say, and something we should keep in mind. Tyranny of the urgent and all, something that we can all keep in mind. So our last clip is really around, we've talked about, all right, you need a dispatcher. Look how much money you're going to recoup in efficiency. The last clip is really about, who do you pick once you're taking a look at getting one? So let's roll that.
All right, so we've convinced you, right? For those of you who are thinking maybe you need a dispatcher, you're like, oh, heck yeah, I need a dispatcher. For those of you who already have one, this might still also be very useful. So we've kind of narrowed down the traits of what makes a good dispatcher. And as you're looking at these, you'll notice some common themes. None of them are that they can fix everything, right? Our dispatchers should stay out of the weeds. Our dispatchers are keeping everything flowing, right? So you'll notice the first thing we put is communication. We want them to be clear and concise. They should be calm under pressure. They're that first contact for our clients, so they should be able to de-escalate some of those, we'll call them big feelings that people get, right, when they call in. They should also have a good set of customer service skills. So this doesn't mean that they apologize to every client that calls in, but it does mean that the client calls in and says, I feel better because somebody had a half therapy, half telling me what the plan is session, right? Sometimes these personal skills are something that we put at the bottom of our list. They're not as important as technical or things like that, but honestly, this is probably the most important thing you can have, is a really empathetic, calm person. Second thing is being organized. Process, process, process. detail-oriented. We call the dispatcher the protector of the process for a reason. So they're going to be the kind of person who loves a system, loves documentation. And the only way you learn from experience is by making sure that data exists somewhere. Hint, you heard about data and other AI stuff, it works for service too, right? So they're going to be the people making sure that your IT glue, your PSA, your RMM, everything is being updated, holding your engineers to account, making sure that when tickets come back, they have a configuration attached, that the categorization is on point, that their resolution actually says what they did, right? I heard earlier in a session, we used AI, we measured all these things, it popped out the answer. What did we do to solve this problem? I fixed it. Doesn't help us, right? So a dispatcher can be that quality control, that person who's making sure that all of our systems are really maintained. And the last thing is really adaptability. Constant fires, constant emergencies. This is going to be the thing that sets them apart from a lot of your other resources. They're going to be able to hold it together when everybody else is panicking. They're going to be nimble, they're going to be flexible, and they're going to love solving puzzles. It's not to say that they're going to get stuck on a ticket. What they're going to get stuck on is making sure every ticket, it goes where it's supposed to be. That giant puzzle, right? That giant jigsaw puzzle. So with all of that, you're going to find somebody who's comfortable and capable managing chaos. They're bringing the systems, they're safeguarding the processes, and they're being comfortable in that space where they're dealing with those big feelings and helping everybody get through probably the worst day in their week, right?
Yeah, that's a tall order, right? So I'm curious, Chris, cast back in time when you were looking for a dispatcher, perhaps, or maybe if you could have picked the most ideal dispatcher. You're in the interview room. What do you ask them to get at these things? What kind of scenarios do you put forward, or questions do you put forward to see if somebody's going to be good at dispatching?
I think, well, you mentioned communication, organization, and adaptability. If you think about trying to vet that in an interview, I've had all sorts of creative questions. I've asked them what their sock drawer looked like. I've talked to them about what do they do when they're in a tense situation, and sometimes we've even put them in a tense situation. We've had them mock a phone call. We had a phone in the conference room, and we'd have somebody from outside the room call in and have them on the spot with everybody watching them go through answering the call and dealing with it. Can you communicate under pressure? Can you answer the questions and keep a smile on your face and do all of that? Sounds pretty intense for an interview, but the right type of people tend to be those ones that just roll with stuff, and they do it with a smile
Mhm.
on their face. It's really important that they have fun managing the chaos, as you mentioned. I think that adaptability is a key part too. So a lot of it's just asking questions to keep them on their toes and see how they adjust. And a really interesting tactic that one of my leaders had done in the past is he would invite them and potentially their significant other to lunch after the interview to see how did they act in a different environment with different people around. Because keep in mind, this dispatcher has to interact with techs, they have to interact with all your clients, they have to interact with everybody else in the company and do it effectively. And that's a pretty unique environment for people to be in.
Yeah. So we mentioned that unique relationship between service manager and dispatch. You just mentioned this sort of relationship between the team and the dispatcher, all those engineers, and even the clients and the dispatcher. It's not a role without conflict. So let's get to some advice around when that conflict does arise. Let's say, as the keeper of the process, the dispatcher is trying to keep people doing what they're supposed to be doing, and maybe engineers aren't exactly following the lead. What would be your advice to a service manager, a leader, to make sure that that dispatcher has what they need to make sure that process is followed?
Yeah, I just was on a call with a client who just hired a new service coordinator earlier today. And one of the questions I had was exactly this. How are you backing your service coordinator or dispatcher? How do you support them? Because probably the most common thing, and Amanda, I think you'll relate to this running a dispatch peer group, is responsibility without authority. We ask
Mm.
the dispatcher to push the text and do a lot of things, but if they're not really given authority, meaning those people don't report to them, they don't if the service manager does not have their back in supporting that, the behavior is going to be one of tension and frustration. And what we're really trying to create is this nice symbiotic relationship between the techs and the dispatcher. And it takes effort and time. It doesn't happen right away. And sometimes when the dispatcher's holding the team accountable, there's frustration there, but the service manager needs to monitor that, listen to the dispatcher, and then go in and talk with the techs and say, here's why I have them do that. This is why it's important for you to follow this process, and why we're taking the time to get you back on track with it. Because if we do these things in this certain way, it's better for everybody, the client experience, your experience, the dispatcher, and in the end, it produces more efficiency. And I always try to tie this back with the techs. That efficiency translates to dollars below the line or out the bottom, net profit, which helps us grow the business, which means I can pay you more and promote you and all of those things. That's why the efficiency matters. It really boils down to the numbers.
Yeah. And human behavior is a little bit like water. It follows the path of least resistance. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I love the why component. Sometimes explaining the why behind it can be that sort of fence that keeps our cattle wrangling the right direction, right? To go back, there's a reason why we're wearing these hats. Yes, the very silly theme. But I love that, because sometimes people forget that it's not just about following the rules, it's about understanding why they exist. So I love that. And I love the imbuing your dispatcher with some of your magic dust of authority. I think sometimes that does the trick. So closing up here, I'd love to hear. I know that we kind of peaked at some of the numbers. I think if we looked at the total numbers, that works out to basically the cost of a dispatcher. Spoiler alert. So I'm curious, if you have any other final thoughts or thoughts around sort of um, any of our resources. I know that we're gonna put in the show notes a couple of things. We have a dispatcher job description, dispatcher task list, and a scorecard. So if you don't already have one, those tools will help you look for one. And if you do have one, potentially set up some more guidelines. Chris mentioned earlier around what should they be doing? What should they be doing with that role? What should we be holding people accountable to? So I'm just going to open it up here and say, what else should we know coming out of this about dispatch, about service management, about any of the topics we've talked about today?
I like it's later on in the presentation. So if you were actually at Beyond, you got to see the whole thing. We didn't show this clip, but if you extend the math, it does play out to over the cost of a dispatcher. That's why I was saying 5 techs. If you take 5 times that $12,000, well, now you're pretty much going to cover the cost with overhead of a dispatcher, but that's that conservative 15 minutes. It's more than 15 minutes. I guarantee it. If you track the time lost in a day for a tech to schedule their own tickets, decision fatigue, juggle phone calls, the inefficiency of juggling and dealing with the urgent P1s without any guidance, the bumping into each other that people are doing, I guarantee it's more than 15 minutes, probably about an hour. And in the presentation we mentioned, I think it boiled down to $343,000 a year, which I think I said it there, but hey, if you want to hire a dispatcher for that much, give me a call. Like that would be a fun job at that price. Yeah, exactly. So I think you can afford the dispatcher and then see that go to your bottom line. And we have had people tell us time and time again, when they implement a solid dispatch process and system and it's followed by their team, they gain back capacity. Time and time again, we hear that.
100%. You also get the added bonus of some account management in there, maybe some coverage of some other areas. We get a lot of jack of all trades as dispatchers too. So if you're looking for somebody who's really comfortable doing that track switching, being able to manage multiple things at once, they also become a really powerful person in your company that can handle a lot of
Mm-hmm.
different functions as well. Yeah, definitely a superpower for sure. Well, I think I'm gonna bring us all home, little doggy. I guess. Anything else you'd like to add before you go today? I always love speaking with you. Thank you so much for being my partner in crime at Beyond. That was my first time on stage, and it was fantastic, mostly because I got to share it with you. So, anything else you'd like to leave us with today?
Well, you knocked it out of the park, Amanda. You did great. So if that's your first time, let's see what happens in the future times because you'll keep stepping it up. I'll have to keep up with you. I think just parting, I would say look for ways. I mean, we at Academy, we're here to help you grow. That's our purpose. That's why we exist. We want to help you achieve whatever you're trying to achieve in your business. And you need to utilize the resources that are there. Like Amanda said, there's a bunch of them that are going to be given to you after watching this. There's on demand stuff. And then, yeah, you can pay for some instructor led courses or coaching. But again, the end result of that investment is return on that investment multiple times over. So just know that sometimes you need a little help, and we're here to do that. I love trying to help people figure this out and really get to see those results. That's what it's about. So good luck to you all. You'll be able to do it. And we know that you have support in this crew if you need it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for today, Chris. I appreciate you as always. Great conversation and great points. I could listen to you herald the values of dispatch all day. It warms my little dispatcher heart. I appreciate you. Thank you for being on. And up next, we have a new sales pitch from Keith Marciano. So take it away, Keith.
I want to start with two quotes from Hall of Fame baseball managers. The first one is from Joe Torre, four-time World Series championship manager. Competing at the highest level is not about winning. It's about preparation, courage, understanding, and nurturing your people. Winning is the result. The other one is from Earl Weaver. The key to winning games is pitching, fundamentals, and 3-run homers. To win more business, to improve your fundamentals, sales leaders, salespeople, and sales teams must set clear goals and KPIs that they can strive to hit. I'm privileged to kind of give you a tutorial around how to plan for sales success in 2026. So let's touch all the bases on 4 sales goals to help you do so. 1. Sales targets. This would include year-over-year improvements in total revenue, total managed services revenue, and the number of new managed services clients. A best-in-class sales org is striving for 20% year-over-year growth in new managed services revenue. 2. KPIs on weekly sales accountability. This includes number of first-time appointments with prospects who have intent to buy managed services. KPIs on networking events attended, quick chats, 5-minute conversations that come from introductions that you get from your existing clients and centers of influence, referral sources, etc. If you set a goal of 1 to 2 first-time appointments per week and you achieve that, you're going to be on track to exceed your sales targets if you're targeting the right people. 3. Sales training. Getting sales skill improvement is vital. What will you invest in yourself to do each month to get better? Even pro athletes have coaches and trainers to help them get better. 4. Remove clutter. Get the junk off your plate that is not getting you results. All the other stuff doesn't matter. Get those things delegated. There are only so many hours in a day to reach your buyer. Do those other things, those admin tasks, do them after hours or have somebody else do them. To learn more about this topic and planning for 2026, please go to Pax8's YouTube channel or wherever you may listen to your podcast and search for Pax8 Results Selling Framework Podcast. We recently recorded and published one called 2026 Sales Action Plan. We do have also a lot of other podcasts around selling IT services, so please subscribe, listen, share it away. We want to help you grow your business. The new season's coming up. Are you prepared to compete and win?
What a great sales pitch. As always, bringing the metaphor and the value. Thank you, Keith. Thanks again to our guest, Chris Wicks, Manager of Coaching at Pax8 Academy. If you'd love to get more of Chris, you could join coaching, or if you're at peer groups, you might see him in person next time. So take a look at those opportunities. Make sure you check out the show notes for those resources we mentioned, and we'll welcome you back next time. Same bat channel, same bat topic. Thanks, and see you next time.